cruise ship/hotel workers. What is something you aren't allowed to share? The staff on most all cruise lines are not trained nearly well enough to handle an abandoned ship situation. It would be chaos if it were to happen on a large vessel. The safety briefing you go to is just theater, and we want to be there even less than you do. Norovirus is way more common on ships than you would think. Security staff on ships are poorly equipped to handle a major security breach, like an active shooter situation. The words "Bright Star" over the PA indicates a medical emergency is happening and is a page for medical staff to respond. The captain earns bonuses for saving fuel. Leaving port early or arriving late means the ship can go slower and conserve fuel, which means more money for the captain. This paints a pretty concerning picture of cruise safety. The lack of proper training for staff in emergencies, like abandoned ship scenarios, could lead to serious chaos. Norovirus on ships is more common than expected, which isn't great. Then there's the issue with security not being ready for major threats. Plus, it's shady how fuel savings affect the captain's bonuses, making safety feel secondary. Just a lot to think about here. /u/Pixielix had some great insights into what goes on below the decks on a cruise ship the last time this was asked. I am a cruise ship worker. First one is, we don't want you to know that we actually have more fun than the guests. Sure, we'll work the big white hot party that you're all going to, but once we finish our shift, all hell is breaking loose in the crew bar. Just below and to the sides of where you are sleeping, there are crew members having sex, smoking, and drinking. Our beers are $1. No drugs or spirits, though. We also don't want you to know that all those funny jokes we tell you at bingo, yeah, same ones are said every single cruise. That really funny answer you gave us about your wife during the happy couples game? Heard it. It was said last cruise and the one before that, and the one before that. We are not allowed to fuck the passengers. But we do know all the nooks and crannies the cameras don't reach. There are morgues below deck and a jail cell. We get at least 3 deaths on board a month. Some people go on a cruise to die. No, I do not know where Jack/Rose is. They're not real people. This gives a different perspective on cruise life. The crew seems to enjoy themselves more than the guests, which is surprising. The routine of telling the same jokes over and over makes sense, though. The part about having a morgue and jail on board is a bit creepy. It's a reminder that cruises aren't all fun and games. Overall, it's an interesting behind-the-scenes look at cruising. Yeah, I can finally answer this. I work at an upscale resort. Nights average $500 a night. I work in the entertainment department, meaning we help with both the daycare center and with large groups in-house that companies host. I will say that our child daycare is pretty safe. The only sketchy thing I would say is that we will always tell you that your kid had a good time, regardless if they had been crying up until just before you got there. Parents leave their numbers with us to call if the kid wants to go home, but whenever a kid complains that they want to go home, we do everything in our power to make sure that they stay, because $. Also, the in-group activities that we do, biking, hiking, etc., are sometimes made up on the spot since the entertainment department decided not to properly train us in all of our offered activities. Newer staff, generally the people that only work summers, are told the morning of that they're running a certain activity and given a really vague rundown of how it's supposed to go and told to do their best to make stuff up but make sure it sounds good. Companies pay thousands of dollars for these activities, but I can assure you the thought that goes into these activities is essentially zero. Sounds like an interesting setup. Making kids stay even if they're upset is a bit off, and the training seems pretty lax for something that brings in so much money. It's a weird mix of wanting kids to have fun and the bottom line. I guess it's a job, but you wonder how often parents figure it out. Overall, it sounds like a challenging work environment. Hotelier here. I worked in numerous luxury 5-star properties worldwide. You will be shocked if you know the food quality in buffets. I've seen yellow food coloring added and labeled as saffron sauce. Pan-fried sea bass? It's pan-fried white fish that comes in generic bags labeled white fish. People change the expiration date on stuff so that the food cost doesn't increase. The amount of frozen food sold and labeled as fresh is astounding. A la carte food tends to have much better quality. The insights into buffet food quality are interesting. It's surprising to hear about the practices in luxury hotels. The deception with food labeling really stands out, especially the saffron sauce and fresh items that aren't what they're claimed to be. It makes sense that a la carte options would be better. Makes you rethink dining experiences for sure. Thanks for sharing your perspective. I'm a front desk manager at a hotel. I want to jump in and say something before this gets real big. When this kind of thread pops up, someone always says that the front desk GSA can upgrade or change rates for a guest if the guest is nice to them/tips them. While this may happen sometimes, it is not common. If one of my employees gave someone a cheapo rate, he has to explain why. It will come up in our reports. That being said, hotels are a ton of fun. I can't think of any big secrets, but I will say this. If you have any questions or requests, no matter how stupid or weird, let the staff know. We love to help people. That's why we went into the industry. And it makes it a lot better for both the guest and the staff when we can help you while you're still in the hotel, and not when you're calling corporate after checkout to complain. It's cool that you're setting the record straight about front desk upgrades. It makes sense that staff can't just hand out discounts without reason. Sharing that guests should feel free to ask questions is a solid point too. It does help create a better experience on both sides. No one likes dealing with issues after the fact. Overall, the hospitality vibe seems pretty laid back. At IHG hotels, that is Holiday Inn, Staybridge Suites, Crown Plaza, etc. If you say you're there for a funeral/death, and you ask for the bereavement rate, it's close to 50% off. We also weren't allowed to mention it exists, or give the rate unless directly asked for it by a guest checking in. Something else we hid from guests. Generally, when a guest booked a room from a third-party company, Orbitz, Booking, Expedia, they typically paid more. Our managers had us go out of our way to hide that from guests. Lastly, if a guest came into the hotel that didn't fit their ideal guest, that is, tattoos, tattered clothes, etc., we were instructed to quote a much higher room price. And if they decided to stay, to actually charge them this inflated price. This is kind of shady. Offering discounts for certain situations is common, but having to keep it under wraps seems off. The part about third-party bookings also feels like a sneaky move. It's interesting how places try to cater to their ideal image by charging more based on appearances. Overall, it raises a lot of questions about fairness in pricing at hotels. I work as a longshoreman at a cruise ship terminal. More people die on cruises than you realize, mostly old people. Norovirus is very common, but more during flu season. Crew member go missing, often hitching a free ride to NYC. Rare occasion your luggage will fall in the water, being loaded onto the ship. The ship will give you a very shitty refund for your loss of luggage. And if you're going to a berth with more than one ship docked, make sure you know what ship you're going on. Idiots tend to let their luggage get on the wrong ship and have a lovely week without it. Word of advice, if you're getting on a cruise ship in NYC, if your ship leaves at 4 o'clock, get there at 1:30 or 2 o'clock. You will avoid the crowds and the check-in lines, and your luggage will be attended to right away. That sounds like quite the job. It's interesting how many things can go wrong with cruises. The missing luggage and the chance of getting norovirus don't sound great. Good advice about arriving early, though. It makes sense to avoid crowds and ensure your luggage is handled properly. It's a wild experience working there for sure. Not really a secret, but I found it interesting from BSing with the waiter on my cruise. If you're eating in the dining room, the kitchen is set up, so for the first 15-ish minutes the cooks are all turning out various appetizers, salads, and soups. So Chef 1, 2, and 3 are all making shrimp cocktail after shrimp cocktail and throwing it on the line. Chef 4, 5, 6 are making the escargot, etc. Your server takes your order and starts grabbing items off the line. After the 15 minutes are up, the cooks switch the line over to entree production. Same process repeats. The problem is when you order an appetizer, salad, or soup after your entree, or after the line is swapped over. It messes up the flow, and they have a smaller number of cooks available to make any of those out-of-order items. It's interesting how kitchen operations are timed like that. Seems pretty efficient for handling orders. Makes sense that ordering out of sync can throw things off. Just shows the rhythm of the kitchen matters. If you know the timing, you can play it smart with your orders. Overall, it's a neat insight into restaurant logistics while on a cruise. Just like airlines, hotels purposefully oversell. The hotel will purposefully sell more rooms than it has and banks on cancellations/no-shows. It's very possible at any given time that you could show up with a reservation and be walked to another property where the hotel will then pay for your room at another location. Might sound like a sweet deal if you're traveling for leisure, but it's a huge pain in the ass if your company is footing the bill and you've been traveling all day and just want to climb into a bed. It's interesting how hotels operate like that, kind of risky. You might end up somewhere else even with a reservation, which is annoying after a long day of travel. It can be a hassle, especially when you're not the one paying. Not a great way to treat guests. It's all about the bottom line for them, I guess. I worked as a room service attendant in a 3-star hotel. Nothing too crazy, but boy were there some crazy stories. I worked with a woman at front desk who had been doing night shifts for over 30 years. One day I asked her a question similar to yours. What can you not tell me about this place? What are the secrets? What's something that would freak me out? She knew every single room where someone had died. She knew how they died, when, what time of day. Everything. She never forgot. She's obviously not allowed to tell customers this information, but boy, it was fascinating. That's an interesting insight into hotel life. It's surprising how much history a place can hold. The details about guests who passed away are kind of chilling, but also intriguing. It must have been hard for her to keep that info to herself. A lot of people probably wouldn't expect that sort of background in a hotel. Just shows there's more to these places than meets the eye. A lot of resort/cruise ships have a hierarchy or maybe caste system of employees. I went to a group interview for a resort that had child summer camp type activities. This was relayed to me by people who had done it before. At the top of the heap were the Americans, Aussies, Kiwis. They had better rooms, better days off, more perks, such as being allowed in guest areas of the resort. Then came Western Europeans who spoke English. All the Western Europeans spoke English. Then Eastern Europeans who spoke English. Then Eastern Europeans. Then anyone who was not white. The people I interviewed with said the summer camp type jobs are the best jobs. Kids get dropped off after breakfast and picked up by cocktail hour. The nights are yours, where if you work the desk, you can be stuck there at 3 a.m. It's interesting how these hierarchies play out in such environments. It's pretty clear they prioritize certain nationalities, which says a lot about the culture of these resorts. The idea of having the summer camp job sounds appealing, especially with the free time in the evenings. It makes you think about how work conditions vary based on your role and background, which isn't really surprising in hospitality settings. I have worked at a couple B&B style places. First off, we never changed the comforter, only when it had something on it or we had someone we really wanted to impress. In rooms with 2 beds, if one of them looks like it weren't slept in, we don't bother changing the sheets. We just smooth out the wrinkles. Most nights at the places I've worked, we had no nighttime staff. If something happened throughout the night, there is no one there to assist you. We also never locked the doors at night. Anyone could back up a pickup truck to the door, load it up, and be gone before anyone knew. This sounds like a pretty casual approach to managing a B&B. Not changing comforters or sheets unless necessary is interesting. It's a bit concerning about the lack of night staff and unlocked doors, though. Makes you wonder about guest safety. Definitely not the kind of setup you'd expect in a hospitality place. A number of people who work hotels tell you that, after a while, they take your stuff. I have a great story about this. I used to work in a hotel that got lots and lots of government business. Every 6 months or so, the lost and found bin would get tipped out for an hour or so, and we'd be told to take what we wanted and goodwill the rest. Got a few shirts that way. One year, I found in the bin some binders and a bunch of papers in a tube and a little electronic thing with some cards attached to it. The electric device was a temporary key generator, the kind of thing that is used to secure World of Warcraft accounts these days. In those days, however, they were cutting-edge security, and the cards attached to it had words like Nuclear Regulatory Agency and Laptop Checkout Policy written on it. am a computer nerd, so I recognized the security device and made the managers give me it and all the documents. The things in the tube were blueprints or schematics for something I didn't look at too closely. I Googled a few government agencies and sent out a few emails asking if they wanted it back and went to bed. The next morning, I got 3 replies. Summed up, they were, yes, yes, please, and can we send an agent over to pick it up? No idea what the stuff was. Probably nothing too serious, but they got that agent over to me PDQ once I woke up and gave them my address. That's quite an interesting find. Losing something like that, and it ending up in a hotel's lost and found is wild. The immediate response from the government agencies is even more surprising. It's a bit unsettling, though, how easily some sensitive stuff can get misplaced. Guess you really have to be careful with what you carry around. Definitely a story you don't hear every day.